talk. Oh. All right. What it is, what it was, and what it'll be. Hello, everyone. If this is not Terri Lyne Carrington's last performance, nor is it her last Grammy Award, nor is it her first Grammy Award. But we thought that to celebrate, it's not every day that we have an artist in our midst that wins a Grammy Award for Best Jazz Album. I'd like to think that we have partly responsible for this, but the fact of the matter is that she also was the first woman to win it ever in 2013-14. I think right? Yeah, and then she has two others, and also three others. So you have 5 total?
No. Oh, I see what you're saying. I can't do math. This is good. I thought you meant 3.
All right, so we'll resolve that tension. And so I would really like, if those of you who have not had a chance to interact with Terri Lyne, please do it. She is making several more visits here, and including concerts, dance party. We'll send out emails and also while I'm at it here, can we all thank Marjorie for the amazing amount of work that she does to these things, and also for being a really kind and pleasant person to work with. So thank you, Marjorie. And so okay, I'm going to turn it over. Oh no, we have to drink. So I almost forgot. So here's to the 2023 Best Jazz Original Jazz Album, and this is it's called New Standards, which comes from Terry's book of 101 beautiful pieces of composed all by women, and you're going to ultimately record all of them, right? Okay. All right. Okay. So here's to Terri Lyne Carrington.
Yeah, I don't drink before I play, so I just had one sip, but if my time goes out the window, we'll know why. But thank you. This is really sweet. I think I've not been ever celebrated with a toast for any of the Grammys or anything with this many people toasting. So this is memorable and special and unique in my journey thus far. And it's nice to see so many familiar faces. So many of you I've either talked to or saw at kind of the listening sessions that we've done. So when I first came here in September, I guess we were in the same room, right? I didn't know any faces, right? So everybody was a stranger. And now I actually feel this community, which is nice. So thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me to be in this community. And it's been cool just talking and getting to know a little more about what you guys do and the connections. I'm not sure I fully made the connections, as far as I feel like it's a lifelong understanding, in some ways, how music and science, kind of their similarities, how they come together, their differences. I mean, because every conversation, your mind is blown, from my end. And hopefully, I've said a few things that were of interest to some of you as well. But mostly, I just want to say thank you for this acknowledgement and introduce a couple of friends that will play with us. And I think the format will be that we'll play a couple of tunes and then talk a little bit. I'll talk a little bit with Mike, and then we'll play a couple of tunes. So we have my bass, Rashawn Carter. And on trumpet, Milena. Now, 3 names or 2 names? Which ones am I doing? 2? The first 2? Or the? Okay. Milena Casado on trumpet. And of course, this gentleman who's playing guitar with us, Michael. And this is the first time we've played together. And I always say that's the beauty of jazz, at least some kinds of jazz, where you can play with people that you've never played with. Like the 4 of us. I mean, I've played with them separately, but not together. And never played with Michael, so we can come together and have a conversation based on a repertoire and a language that we all know, in various ways. Like Milena was pointing out, she's from Spain, and she was pointing out when we met, or originally when we met, she didn't speak English, but we still could have played together without, speaking any common verbal language. So it's similar with when you haven't played with people. And you feel each other out. So maybe that's, imagine if you're having a deep conversation with somebody that you've never talked to. And, you have to feel each other out. You start to understand their anticipations in conversation and, their pauses and all of those things. And you find a rhythm to speak with them. So that's what we'll be doing. We'll be finding each other's rhythm. Yeah, I guess that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you again. And then we said we would play. Let's start with recording. Okay. We're going to start with a piece written by Joe Henderson, saxophone player. It's called Recordame. Is that Spanish? What is that?
Yeah. No, it's not.
Remember me, no?
Recuérdame.
American Spanish.
formal part. The informal, formal part.
So Terry, what just happened?
You tell me. I don't know. I think we just played a couple of tunes. We played this last piece is hey, Rachel. This last piece we played was written by Wayne Shorter, who was a big mentor of mine, somebody very, very important in my life. I probably wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for him. Though I never played that song with him because he wasn't playing his old stuff. In fact, if you mention the Blue Note stuff, he would run the other direction. Daniela Perez loves to tell that story where we were in a session and he started quoting something from the old records, and he said, "Oh, Blue Note," and he ran out the room. Somebody that was always moving forward, just like momentum and energy and things that never stop or remain stagnant. That's epitomizes Wayne Shorter. Not that these songs aren't beautiful and nice to check out. And before that, we played Recordame, I think that I mentioned.
So, Wayne Shorter, for those of you that don't know, if you take music theory for jazz, they say this is what works until Wayne Shorter, and then everything changed. And then Wayne changed, as you just said, and then he then became Weather Report, and so it's like the whole new world of music. And you've done that several times already in your career. How many?
Not nearly like a Wayne Shorter. I mean, I try to, remain as fresh as I can with projects, album projects, and even to some degree with my playing, which is mostly just from listening to young people and being influenced by my students and who they're listening to, and basically what each generation is dealing with, trying to, I can't be of this generation. There's certain things that are just in my DNA that's not in theirs, and vice versa. So all I can do is let these younger generations influence me in some way, and that's what I try to do. But I'm not necessarily saying that I'm reinventing myself. I'm just trying to be influenced by all the things around me that are current.
So, in many ways, that's a lot like doing science. I mean, especially neuroscience, because we're sort of feel like we're on the frontier, and we it's not like we get bored with the things we think we know, but I think each time we learn something, it just really opens up a whole world of things we don't know. So, I mean, one of the fun things about having you here is that we, over the year, and our relationship will continue. You're a member of our family now, the ZI family, and so you're never really going to stop. But Terri reminded me that the first time we had one of these sessions, she said something about that when she's improvising and playing, she's not thinking, and I challenged her on that, and by the time we end this or begin our next phase, I should say, you will be disabused of the idea that you're not using your brain to do all the amazing things you do. So how are you feeling about that?
I mean, I think I probably meant consciously. I mean, I think what, you've pointed out, of course, is that there's a lot of unconscious things happening. But I think the best way to let those unconscious things happen is to get the chatter and the mundane things that your brain is functioning with, like just focusing on consciously, get those out of the way. So for me, when I say that, it means really that I'm not thinking about like what I have for breakfast or what I have to do next. That's really what I'm trying to say. I'm in the present tense. And that's like the best place I think you can be to play music, just to really be in the eternal present. And I think maybe that's when I don't know, you guys would all know, but I think maybe that's when, you're making some space for these other things that are going on in your brain to happen, like you were talking about, time and, things I never thought about as far as playing ahead of the beat, a little behind the beat, or a little ahead of the beat. And with the drums, there's this instrument in between my hand and the instrument, and the musical instrument. There's this other instrument, a stick. So there's something there where you have to know, focus on the velocity, and like I'm not thinking about all of that consciously, but I do know that there's, I know to move my hand up or down on the stick to get a little more power, or to play a little lighter. I know how to pinch the stick if I want to have a little more articulation. And so I had to actually figure out the things that I'm doing to give me the sound that I want, to analyze it, just to be able to teach. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure when you start playing, and people that are playing that, maybe, aren't as trained with teachers. A lot of people play great and haven't had, formal training. I mean, there's the things you're just doing naturally. You hold the stick a little tighter to get a more powerful sound, and when how much wrist movement. Like, I know I have to bring my wrist further back if I want a certain sound, or very little wrist movement. So I think we take those things for granted.
And there's basically a whole course in how the motor system works, in the words you just said, But I think it's really interesting, that tension. I've never really thought about it this way, that when you teach, then you really do have to elevate things to the conscious level and sort of kind of be in your head, because that helps someone else ultimately internalize. But that's I think probably a hard transition then, to go from being as a student sort of accepting it at this high level, but then internalizing it so that it's non-conscious and just flows.
Yeah, and then what is that, right? Flow. Like, how do we get into that? That's what everybody wants. I think we want it in daily life, but we definitely want it when we're playing. Just to be in the flow, in the rhythm of the universe, the natural rhythm of things. And so what is that? Like, what are we doing? Like, I'm still not sure what we're doing to try to channel those things. Maybe you have some suggestions.
My thought about flow is that it's really exactly what you were saying before, about not having this sort of narrator kind of analyzing what you're doing, but also especially in music, this kind of music, where you're constantly listening to everyone else, but in the moment just going there, but not saying, I'm going there now because I just heard it go to the minor, so I'm going to play here, that kind of thing. But just doing it all effectively, non-consciously, except that I think there's nothing that's more conscious than playing music with a group of people. But that flow part is just sort of letting it flow, really. I mean,
Well, I mean, what you just said is super important, the listening part. So, I mean, it's kind of like you're doing a couple of things at once. So obviously your brain has to be involved. I mean, because you're actively listening. And that's the same thing you're doing, right? When you're sitting in the audience, you're actively listening, though you may start thinking about other things. I think that's a good practice, if you're listening to music, to try to listen to it and be right there and not think about other things. That's kind of a meditation, I guess, in a sense. But we're listening consciously, like, to every little minute detail. Is this person in tune? Did they play that change? To the point that some of those things become distractions, when they're not, what you're expecting or what you think they should be or what you would like them to be. But then you have to also respond without, hopefully the goal is to respond without a delay. So you're listening. I think that's kind of one of the most important things that you have to, do. That's probably the primary thing. But then you're, responding. Sometimes you're leading, and other people just have to listen to you as well. But I always, think of it as being on very high input mode as well as an output mode. You know what I mean? At the same time, which is, takes some coordination. Let alone at the drums takes 4-way coordination. Probably more than any other instrument.
Yeah, it's again, those of us who are trying to think about higher brain function or controlling our bodies, and these are all things that go awry in disease. So we'd really like to understand how it works in the normal case. I mean, it just puts so much of it on display when you are intentional about the time that you want something to actually, in a sense, get to the listener's ears, let alone leave your skin, the drum skin. But your movements have to be so adjustable on the fly. So there are people in this room that study this problem, and I just hope that we begin to see in it as we get answers some of the lessons for even having a thought that is also malleable, because I see you nodding now and not nodding to sleep. So okay, I have her interest, so we keep going, and all that happening typically non-consciously, but again, structured as something intentional, and then with the possibility of moderating along the way, or even changing. I'm not going to call on you, Daniel, unless you have something to say. I'm thinking a lot about his research right now and Mark Churchland's lab's research. You will? You'll shout? I'll give you a microphone. And then we can open it to some more
So
questions.
Mike asked me to, is it on? You can bear it. So I work in the control of movement. I think the incredible ability to time a movement is really very difficult. And we don't know, actually I don't know much about jazz, but we know a lot about very skilled sports people. For example, table tennis players. They can time their smash shots to within 6 milliseconds, so 6/1000ths of a second. And that takes a lot of skill. But what's interesting about that timing, you would think maybe that they start the movement very accurately, or the middle of the movement is very accurate. It's very sloppy at the start. It's only accurate where it matters, at the point of contact with the ball. So they start off with their movement all over the place, but they're able then to guide it by using their feedback from their system to really accurately get there to 6 milliseconds. And one question I have, I don't know the answer to, is are people born with the ability to time better than others, or is it just practice? And my feeling is that some people have less variability in their system, and that someone like you probably was born with less variability and have used that through your life. And maybe Tiger Woods as well. And however much I practice, I'll never achieve that timing. Do you think when you train drummers that some will just never get that ability?
Yeah, I do actually think that there's people that you can practice and get better, but I do feel like I've had students that I feel, funny that they're spending so much money at Berkeley, and you want, because you don't want to say, this maybe you should think about something else, only because it leads you to something else as well. Naturally, I think it's just everything leads to something else, basically. So, but yeah, I do feel like you're correct that some people are born with a higher level of that, and when I started playing, I was 7, and the first thing I could do was keep time. The first time I sat down to the drum set. But I attributed that to, I wasn't attributing it to anything at 7. I wasn't thinking about it. But later, I attributed that to just hearing stories about my dad playing music really loud while my mother was pregnant. And so I feel like I heard it, and he played music that had a beat that was really soulful. So I feel like I heard that and then he played it a lot in the house when I was, born, up until I was 7. So I feel like I just, it was always there, and I somehow connected to it. So, but just with rhythm in general, I didn't practice a lot. I've never been a practicer, unfortunately. I'd be much better if I actually practiced. I practiced, stuff in my formative years, just basic things that you have to learn, like rudiments. But I was never, people will tell stories how they practice, 5 or 6 hours or 7 hours or 10 hours, a day. And I can't even imagine that, like I just can't imagine doing anything that long in one day, you know. So I do think there is some kind of natural abilities, but it doesn't mean a lot too if you're not able to hone them in and have some training and so I think they go hand in hand. I mean, I know people that were awful and then got really good. So there must have been something there, right, that they could get good at. And then there's people that are awful that never got good. So there's, yeah, it's interesting.
Maybe in some ways it's an argument for something that might even be genetic, the level of noise and the variability, Daniel was saying. So it's, I'll tell a little of my own story that that you'll find amusing, I think, is that when my first kid was in the womb, I would tell stories to the belly of my wife at the time, and I would and maybe now you're going to know why it was my wife at the time, but I would say E equals MC squared, E to the I pi equals -1, E to the I pi, I would just give lots of maths, and actually she came out a mathematician, and I came out a divorcee. So.
It's probably something. Yeah, there's.
TMI. Sorry.
I do think there's something that's going on there that while you're forming, because even with kids, like when kids start playing an instrument, I think at a young age and get training, and they hold on like to that. I think that their abilities, like they learn quicker. What I've seen, they learn quicker, and the muscles almost form as they're forming with the thing that they're doing, right? So he's like, I don't know about that. But yeah, so it makes sense that so much is being taken in that we don't even know about. It's funny because you just said that where I was going to try to, when Daniel was talking, I was going to try to say, oh, you mean the noise? And I was thinking that's something I learned here because I never heard the word noise used like you guys use it. So now it's something that whenever I hear the word, I'll think of this place.
I'm going to propose that Daniel should study percussionist because I am going to bet that our timing is better than 6 milliseconds. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Especially since it's swinging like orchestral, swinging heavy cymbals through the air. Yeah, we're better than that. I'll be a subject.
Yeah.
Do you want to open up for questions a
Yeah,
bit?
sure.
Anyone want to just pose a question? And Devin.
Hi, thanks so much. So I think one thing people who study the motor system in this building think about is when one skill transfers to another, and whether there are any connections. So I wonder, as someone who's spent their lifetime doing drums, do you feel like the skills you've learned there, like are you an incredible chopstick user, or like do you hear patterns and raindrops on roofs? Are there places where this like transfers to other areas?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I can use chopsticks. I'm not sure I'm incredible at it, but well, I think drumming and music and rhythm has a lot of math in it, and a lot of problem solving. I think just in general, playing music is all problem solving. So yes, those skills transfer. I mean, I was pretty good in high school. I just didn't, I just wanted to do music. But I mean, I graduated third in my class and, was honor student, the entire time. So, and math was my favorite subject. So, and I don't know if it was my favorite. I really didn't like school, but I just did well. You know what I mean? So I'd always do the least amount of work just to get an A. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that transferred it. Well, it does, because I said I don't like to practice. So it is transferable. But no, I count a lot. I notice that I count. I think it's so weird. Like, I don't know why I do that. So maybe that's something that's transferred. I count, like if I'm walking upstairs, I'm counting the stairs. Like I do, like Jack Nicholson did in that movie, like count like the squares, trying not to step on the line sometimes. Like, like it's it's something about counting and numbers. But so yeah, what else would be transferable? I don't know. What else?
Thanks. That was a great performance. Really enjoyed that. I'm thinking about it in terms of making decisions. So I was looking at all four of you, and each of you made thousands of decisions during the course of that performance, and each of you in different ways. You were talking about how you're holding the stick, the tension on the stick, and I was watching the bass player, and sometimes you would kind of spread up on that string, and the horn player, you were sometimes staccato and sometimes kind of legato. You talked about flow, where you're not thinking about that, but somewhere in the brain there's a kind of decision space for every single moment along that performance. So it's kind of a question for both of you. Of what do you think is going on? I guess I'll leave it at that, but it just is amazing to me to think that every single moment, all four of you had a number of choices you could make, and then you landed on one, and together we had that experience.
I mean, for me, I think one important thing is, because when we said that, the first thing that came to my mind was, I don't like most of the things I play. I mean, I would rather wished I had made a different decision, almost everything, every time. You know what I mean? It's kind of like I much enjoy listening to other people play music, I mean, I don't like, but I like making records because I can go in and kind of orchestrate it and present something. And then, I like certain musical settings where I feel free, and then I can like kind of get into something that I feel good about. But in a setting like this, I would say, I'm always saying, why did I play that? But then I know that I can't actually do that, because if I focus on that too long, nothing will happen. It will just screw up everything. So it's constantly kind of letting go. When they talk about meditation and these thoughts come in, you have to like push them aside. So it's that constantly. But I think one thing that, especially like in improvised music, one thing that's super important is to break habits. So I think that's what I'm thinking about let me play at least something that's not habitual. And so that's kind of like my foundation, even though it's not possible. Some things are habits, but at least that's, a part of the foundation of letting go, letting go of habits. But the things like moving your stick and sound, that's just making your body do the things to create the sound that you want or need at that moment. And I think, we kind of naturally do that.
Well, I mean, to me, decisions encompass just about all of thought. So just about anything that involves any kind of deliberation leading to some kind of commitment among alternatives that fits the definition of a decision. And all the things you pointed out, and many, many more going on up there, could be thought of as decisions. So that's why I think it's useful to study them, because studying decisions means we're studying what a thought is. Having said that, I mean, they come in these many different flavors, and some of them are like motor decisions, like, how much pressure to put on the stick, and so forth, and let it bounce a few times or whatever. I forget what the right word is for that. But but there were other ones like that I was having a blast with, just like because I found it's Milena, sorry. Milena's back was to me, but I loved the sounds coming out of her horn on the first tune, Recorda Me. And I was trying to kind of not get in her way and think there's a time where I will try and like play a kind of something with her and times that I would just get out of the way and so forth. And so those were each like decisions about not wrecking the music and hopefully enhancing it occasionally. So and those were more conscious decisions to start and stop it. But then the flow of the music was non-conscious decisions. You know, every time you play a different note, it's a decision. I was kind of curious if we go a little bit back to the music. On the bass solo, on the last tune we played, you went to like some pretty wild places, and you guys were sort of going kind of communicating, and I was like struggling to know where we were in form, if there even was the form at some points, and I just was kind of curious what was going through the two of your mind when you were kind of locked in. And are you willing to? All right.
Comfortable now. Well, yeah, there's so much that goes on. I think for one, it's really nice to play music in this sort of setting. I feel like so many of the times we've played, it's been in theaters or large stages where we could maybe not hear each other so well, or we lose a sense of intimacy. So I think, for me, what's interesting is there's certainly a lot of sympathetic decision making, decision making that goes along with, what's happening in the drums, what's happening at the guitar, what's happening, at the trumpet, and then also to play music in a room for people certainly influences a certain kind of decision making. I think you don't want it to, but I know I'm certainly sometimes more than others, but especially in an intimate setting like this, there's a bit of sympathetic decision making as well. Like within the space, you can feel like the energy or the temperament of people in the room. So with that said, also I was having a good time, and so part of my decision making, it's you're guided by what's happening with your fellow musicians, but also, I got a lot of things to say. I've sat around at home practicing and living life and being influenced by all these things, that when you get the opportunity to sort of speak through your instrument, sometimes it comes out a little more clearer than others. In this case, something was like just feeling good and fun, and so there was a nice space to really express that. And then, I think sympathetically you can kind of feel when, we sort of say how large the room is in terms of the space we have to improvise. And so, you have these moments where you feel that the form and the time can flex a little bit, and they're still there, and maybe they're not there, but they're there in a special kind of way that you really feel like you can move with one another. And so I think there was a moment of freeing of the form and freeing of the time where we can really move with one another, knowing that we'll find once we come out, or once I come out, I think everybody kind of cool, you start doing crazy things with your hands and people are like, okay, cool, and then they just it's like, cool, we'll find him when he gets out of it. And you kind of feel out the musical situations. I can't do that everywhere and not with everyone, but you certainly, we had a nice moment to play through feeling each other's temperaments. And so I think that's sort of what we saw, that there's a lot of individual decisions made, but also sympathetic decisions made around the music and everyone else's deal.
Yeah, something you said too about the room, like feeling the energy of the people in the room. I do think that we do that because we're not playing for ourselves. I mean, sometimes you play for yourselves, I guess, but for the most part, you're trying to connect with the humanity in others. And that's not incredibly scientific, I guess. Maybe it is. But I mean, I think there's something there that's really about how do we reach people, how do we connect with, why does what we do or what we did, why is that of any importance to you today in your life? You know what I mean? Why would you care? And I think that's like a thing, trying to, play in a way with care yourself to evoke care from others. You know what I mean? And the room, physically playing the room. You have to play the room. I don't mean the people in the room, I just mean the room itself. The sound of a room is always like, I almost look at it as there's 4 of us playing, and that's like the 5th band member, the room.
Interesting. I love the idea of this phrase you used of sympathetic decision making. It's I'm going to think about that a lot. I'm thinking about it right now, and I won't bore everyone with crazy thoughts about what's happening in the brain for it. But I'm thinking about our institute and what it means to do science together, and what it means to build an institute and work with other people in different domains, and outreach and people taking care of the animals. There is a way in which when we see each other, we resonate with each other, or at least we should, and we'd all, I think, like to aspire to a community at this place that is, I'm looking at you, Dana, that is more sympathetic in our decision making. It would be really a great coming together. So thank you so much for that. And then, your point about the room, there is this way that every time, all of the influences on the micro decisions that we make every encounter special. I think it's what we missed in COVID. We didn't come together and have all those micro decision-making moments. But so, did you want to add something, Melina? Yes. Everyone got to hear your horn. Now we get to hear your voice.
Yeah, I guess when I think about decision making and music, I think about language itself. When I'm playing, I'm not consciously thinking what I'm gonna do, but I'm just in the room, as you were saying, interacting with other people, talking with other people through music, and somehow it feels there is a topic or an idea developing when we're playing, and I'm just feeling it and trying to react to that or to add something to it. It's a little bit of a conversation like what we're having right now. I'm just saying something, and you are listening, and maybe you have something to add to what I'm saying, and it basically feels like that, just a conversation, getting information, giving information, listening, and also being open to the unknown to see where this conversation is going to take us. Because maybe we had a topic that we were talking about, but maybe the topic is changing now and we're going somewhere else. So it's just about being in the moment and really feeling the energy and just being open to hear what everybody else has to say.
Yeah, Wayne Shorter used to say, like when people would ask, how much did you rehearse, or how much did you practice, and he would say, how do you rehearse the unknown? So yeah, it's like always, thinking about going to places unknown, consistently trying to be fearless and courageous as well.
Great. So, speaking of the unknown, shall we go back to the songs I do not know?
So we're going to play, first I think we'll play Freedom Jazz Dance. And then we'll play Solar, which I don't know who wrote it. It's attributed to Miles Davis, but I don't think he wrote it. That's Rashawn Carter on bass. And Milena Casado on trumpet. And Mike Shadlin on guitar. Woohoo! So I don't know. And for anyone that has champagne left, cheers.